Hey guys, this is Alex, and today we will be looking at the second half of this Monet, a retrospective art book. And to do that, I do have to wear glasses. Okay. Now, I don't remember exactly where we left off, but let's see if I can find a familiar page. I think it's near this part. Yeah, this seems like around the right place. So, when we left off, we were around the time when Monet and the other Impressionists were beginning to show their work together under that name. So, this section of the book includes a lot of articles written in newspapers at that time. And that's kind of the idea behind this collection. It includes mainly articles written in the time in which the pieces were shown, rather than articles written by contemporary art critics and art historians. So it gives you a sense of popular opinion about Monet and the Impressionists at a time when their work was considered pretty extreme. So let's read a little bit more about what people were saying about Monet. So this article is written by Georges Rivière, I believe. April 6th through 28th, 1877. Georges Rivière, 1855 to 1943, a civil servant working at the Ministry of Finance, was one of Renoir's closest friends and the godfather of Cézanne's son. In 1877, he published 4 issues of L'Impressionist, a newsletter promoting the third group exhibition. Later on, one of his daughters married Cézanne's son, and the other daughter married a son of Renoir's. Wow. So I was wrong. These aren't the dates in which the show was running. These are the dates in which these articles were being printed. So obviously a supporter of the Impressionist movement. Monsieur Monet, whose works we are about to describe, seems to be the very antithesis of Monsieur Renoir. The strength, the animation, in short, the life that the painter of the ball infuses into people, Monsieur Monet infuses into things. He has endowed them with a soul. In his paintings, water laps, locomotives move, wind fills sails, plots of land, houses, everything in this great artist's work has an intense and personal life that no one before had discovered or even suspected. Wow, that's a really beautiful statement and very accurate. You do get a sense of a soul when you look at Monet's pieces. Monsieur Monet not only depicts the imposing power and grandeur of nature, he also pictures it as being charming and pleasant, very much as a happy young man might see it. No gloomy thought ever grieves the spectator standing before the canvases of this powerful painter. After the pleasure of admiring them, our only regret is being unable to dwell forever in the luxuriant nature that blossoms in his pictures. That's very true, and could be part of the reason why Monet has such a broad appeal even today. You do get a sense of the power of nature, but not so much its destructive power. So in our other video, we talked a little bit about Turner and nature in Turner's paintings seems a lot more violent and destructive and like awesome in the traditional sense. Okay, here we have Gare Saint-Lazare, the train for Normandy. Another piece at the Art Institute of Chicago. Okay, so it looks like he did a couple pieces of Gare Saint-Lazare. These are really neat because of the smoke stacks kind of coming out of the locomotives. This is kind of wild that this is what Gare Saint-Lazare looked like in 1877, considering how modern it looks today. But that's cool that this exists. We have a few more pieces from Georges Rivière. Okay, so this might be good to read because it gives us a little bit of background about what the Impressionists were doing to evade the oppressive salon. To be dramatic. To flee an unbearable tyranny. Like I said, we're being dramatic here. Monet suggested to his friends, victims like himself, maybe not the best use of the words victim, to exhibit together outside of the official salon and to abandon it once and for all. Bear in mind that at the time there was only one salon, and individual exhibits were rare. Yeah, so this is 1927. This is written. Okay, so Monsieur Rivière lived until 1943. So this piece is more of a reflection about the Impressionist period and what the Impressionists did to evade the salon. Renoir, Pissarro, Degas, Sisley, and Guillaume, I don't know how to pronounce that, welcomed Monet's proposition, but they didn't all accept it without restrictions. Renoir didn't want to forfeit his chances of ever again exhibiting in the salon because he couldn't accept the idea of giving up any freedom. Degas reckoned that an exhibit that included only Monet and his friends was bound to be a failure and would be too limited in character. He therefore proposed to add a certain number of already known artists, which would take away from the exhibit's appeal as a protest. So in 1877, at Rue Le Pelletier, under exceptionally favorable conditions, a group of works that made this show the culminating point of Impressionism as a coherent group. Monet exhibited the most canvases, 30. Wow. There were 7 views of the Saint-Lazare train station included. They marked a stage in Monet's career and formed the first of the series on a same subject, seen from different angles or at different hours of the day. Yeah, we'll see later on in this book, I'm sure, more about Monet's famous art series that he did of the same place, the same building at different times of day to show the change of light and stuff. Oh, so this is the... I'm sorry, I'm just putting all this together as I read. I don't know much about the Impressionists or art history. I'm just kind of like interested, you know? But it looks like this piece, written by Rivière in 1927, is a reflection about the gallery show that he wrote about in 1877 in this piece. Oh, so that's interesting. It's an interesting sequence. Okay, so here's another segment from Renoir's son, Jean Renoir. And this looks like it's about the Saint-Lazare paintings. One fine day he said to Renoir triumphantly, "I've got it, the Gare Saint-Lazare. I'll show it just as the trains are starting, with smoke from the engines so thick you can hardly see a thing. It's a fascinating sight, a regular dream world." He did not, of course, intend to paint it from memory. He would paint it in situ so as to capture the play of sunlight on the steam rising from the locomotives. "I'll get them to delay the train for Rouen half an hour. The light will be better then." "You're mad," said Renoir. Monet, however, seemed to rise above all contingencies. He put on his best clothes, ruffled the lace at his wrists. We learned in the previous video that Monet was quite a sartorialist. And twirling his golden-headed cane, went off to the offices of the Western Railway, where he sent in his card to the director. The usher, overawed, immediately showed him in. The director asked Monet to be seated. His visitor introduced himself modestly as the painter, Claude Monet. The head of the company knew nothing about painting, but did not quite dare to admit it. Monet allowed his host to flounder about for a moment, then deigned to announce the purpose of his visit. "I have decided to paint your station. For some time I have been hesitating between your station and the Gare du Nord, but I think that yours has more character." It's funny. He was given permission to do what he wanted. The trains were all halted, the platforms were cleared, the engines were crammed with coal so as to give out all the smoke Monet desired. Can you imagine? Sorry, I'm being a little loud. But I can't imagine this happening today. Like, I feel like Banksy couldn't demand this. You know what I mean? But I think people had more of a reverence back then toward art. Sorry, I didn't know that was in the frame. But that's really cool, isn't it? I was kind of trying to learn a little bit more about Impressionism before I recorded this, because like I said, I'm definitely no art historian. But something I found that came up a few times was that Impressionists really wanted to showcase how much life had changed in recent years, recent decades, because this was sort of an industrializing period in Europe. So a lot of the movement and the visual noise and stuff kind of is meant to convey that industrialization. Okay, so we're jumping ahead a bit here. I was reading this card, and it's like an announcement of a funeral, but it's a joke. The Impressionist school has the honor of informing you of the grievous loss that is suffered in the person of Monsieur Monet, one of its revered masters. The funeral for Claude Monet will take place on May 1st, next at 10 o'clock in the morning, the day after the opening at the church of the Palais de l'Industrie in Monsieur Cabanel's gallery. You are requested not to attend. To Profondi. On behalf of Monsieur Degas, head of the school. Okay. What? I'm so confused. This mock funeral announcement anticipated Monet's withdrawal from the Impressionist circle to show for the first time since 1868 at the Salon held by that time at the Palais de l'Industrie. Okay, so I get it. Sorry, it took me forever to get that. This more represents him leaving, quote unquote, leaving the Impressionist group to show at the Salon, because the Impressionists were very anti-Salon at a certain point. All right. Are we awake now? Here we have some nice outdoor pieces, or plein air pieces. This one's really neat, huh? He manages to paint trees so beautifully. I actually find trees to be some of the most difficult forms to represent because of their complexity. And it's easy to both oversimplify a tree and to overcomplicate a tree. But the way he paints them, they really seem so natural. Here we can see the trunk and then the branches, all the little apple blossoms, both on the tree and falling on the ground. Then this long shadow. The sun must be over here somewhere. And this really neat little hill. I won't go so far as to call them happy trees, but they do look pretty happy. Then over here we have another landscape, but this one is a lot darker in tone. Seems like this field might be in shadow. These are poppies. I've never seen in person poppies, like a field of poppies, but they always look really neat in movies and photos and art. I like this horizon line here. This little house just really feels like being in the countryside, going on a walk through tall grass. Okay, here we have another luncheon scene. Those are pretty common in Impressionist work. This little guy or gal in shadow here. The way he paints soft midday natural light is really stunning, because you can see this kind of like dappled light coming through shadow here on this table and on this bench, and then this bright sunlight here on this pathway. Two ladies and a straw hat up here. There's a lot going on in this painting. (1872 to 76). Here we have a bridge painting owned by Mr. and Mrs. Paul Mellon. Pretty famous folks. I like the way these masts come up so sharply, vertically. There's the boom. We have another little sailboat in the background here. And in the last video, we talked a little bit about the similarity to Japanese woodblock prints. You can definitely see some of that here with this kind of forced perspective, a very sharp perspective of this bridge. And then this flowing sky, and then these sharp lines here. I love the reflections on the water in this piece. It's really beautiful. Got another bridge piece here in shadow. And then a winter scene. 1875. I like this winter sunshine up here. That's really cool. I feel like that would be hard to show in a painting, but he really does it well. Some people walking on an unplowed path. Unshoveled path, I suppose, in those days. Wow, that's really a cool piece. I don't know that I've seen this one. I mean, obviously I haven't seen it in person, I don't think, but I don't think I've seen an image of it. This is just called Apartment Interior from 1875. This one is so cool. You thought I was going to say something interesting and smart, but I didn't. No, this one is really cool. I love how there's almost this frame of these drawn curtains and plants, and it's almost exact. They're almost symmetrical with this chandelier coming down the middle, and then this flooring, which I love this particular type of wood floor where it's this pattern, this kind of like chevron pattern. Just beautifully rendered, this light coming in from this window here on the floor. And then you have this little guy slightly off to one side, just peering out at something we don't see. And then a woman here at the table. But doesn't this seem like almost like a contemporary illustration? Just the use of design elements and symmetry and framing, and I really like this piece. Wow, that's cool. And over here we have Women Among the Dahlias, 1875. They really are hidden by those bushes, aren't they? There's one. There's another. Getting a lot more free and abstract with the brushwork. Whoa. Wow. I don't even know what to say. I wasn't expecting this. This doesn't seem very typical Monet. I wonder if they'll talk about it at all in the book. But this is really something else. this rendering of this brocade embroidered design of this kimono. The Studio Boat, 1876. Wow, this one's really pretty. The Tuileries, 1875. This one's really cool. It looks a little bit like a Turner painting, doesn't it? With the almost imperceptible foreground and then this skyline in the background with the dome. I wonder if that's Sacré-Cœur. That's Notre Dame, maybe? I really don't know, though. I could be totally wrong. Oh, and here are the turkeys. I think they referenced that in one of the criticism pieces. This must have been part of the Impressionist show. This little guy popping up. Oh, and here's a color version of one of the Gare Saint-Lazare pieces. Wow, that one's cool. So here we have the train tracks with the steam engines, conductors or other folks. It's like scaffolding stuff. This roof with the skylight and all this steam. Wow, I love the way he rendered the steam. I don't know what this building is, but it looks familiar. Maybe one of the... If the avenues in Paris had already been built, or the boulevards, this looks familiar to me. I have to look that up. Okay. This one is a little bit about Monet's hobby of boating. Story about meeting Monet. Monet is a true freshwater sailor. He might easily have been one on saltwater too, because a large part of his childhood was spent at Le Havre. It was there that he did his first two paintings, if I'm not mistaken, which won awards at the Salon of 1865 to the most enthusiastic critical acclaim. What's more, Monet owes his first laurels to that genre of seascape, or rather to his seascapes. Since then, he simply managed to put a little less salt in his water. This interviewer wanted to know how Monet had become an impressionist, which is an interesting question. I didn't become one, he answered with superb serenity. As long as I can remember, I've always been one. But still, didn't you belong to a school? Sure, I was a student of Gare, there's that name again, for 3 months, to please my family. Well then, there's still some goodness left among the Impressionists. And then? Then I met Manet, Courbet, and several others. Courbet's a wonderful painter, isn't he? Good Lord, yes. And how did you get to know Manet? I never did get to know him. We met. But to talk about more serious matters, when you Impressionists brought on that split between you and the jury who were imposed on you, did you have any particular reasons? Yes, quite a few. At first the judges really did want to accept some of my canvases, some of the ones there'd been a lot of hoopla over. You want me to tell you about my Green Lady? The Green Lady is referring to the painting we looked at in the last video of Monet's partner Camille with the dress. No, thanks all the same. I read a few articles about it, and as soon as I saw how they were running you down, I said to myself, there's a guy who must have a lot of talent. Monet, who was intensely modest, didn't even bother to acknowledge such base flattery with a nod. He didn't get angry either, which doesn't mean I wasn't telling the truth. For a long time, my friends and I had been systematically rejected by those very same judges. What could we do? It's not enough to paint. You have to sell them. You have to live. The dealers wouldn't have anything to do with us, and yet we had to exhibit. But where? Rent a space? As deep as we dug, we could hardly raise enough between us to rent a box seat at the theater in Cluny. Nadar, the magnificent Nadar, who is as good bread, lent us the space. So Nadar's, that's where they had the first Impressionist exhibition, I believe. We made our debut in the artistic firmament as independent stars. For my own part, I was about as successful as I could have wanted, which is to say I was energetically booed by all the critics at the time. So it looks like since this time he's kind of drifted away from his colleagues. It's an interesting article. I really need to speed up, guys. Getting too into this book. I do like reading about Monet, though. It's interesting, especially contemporary pieces about him. The Pianist, circa 1858. I think I remember reading that Monet started drawing by drawing caricatures when he lived in Le Havre in Normandy, or near Normandy. Which is actually really difficult to draw caricatures. I had one commissioned and I'm scared to do it because I don't want to offend anybody. It's a difficult line to walk. Oh, here's a photograph of Monet in 1883. It's quite a beard. This article is from. L'Ostalot or L'Ostalot. Yeah, it must be L'Ostalot de Bastuet. A critic and author of books on engraving and wood sculpture. So he talks a little bit about Monet's style in this piece. There is nothing excessive there, not even, which would be far worse, anything new. Monsieur Monet paints as many excellent masters have painted and do paint. He lays on just enough color to express not merely the object's color, but the coloration it takes on, for him, at any given distance and in given surroundings. He achieves his ends by applying the rules of contrast, of complementary colors, of irradiation, In short, all the secrets of nature that Veronese and Rubens, to name but two respected examples, discovered and applied long before science thought to legislate them. Undoubtedly, Monsieur Monet's application of the laws of color has aspects that are radical enough to frighten the timid, but if not to the great masters cited above, may he not refer to a painter working today, one who ranks high in the public's opinion? Monsieur Monet's daring choices are evident as well in Monsieur Millet's pastels, the most astonishing, the most masterly lesson in painting we have seen in some time, and yet these magnificent works are well received on the contemporary market. I just wanted to read this portion about Monet's vision and interpretation of light and color. Oh, here we go. Monsieur Monet's eyesight is highly unusual. He sees in a way that most human beings do not, and because he is sincere, he attempts to reproduce what he sees. We know that the solar spectrum includes a range of rays that the cornea intercepts, and that, therefore, the retina does not receive. This range is called ultraviolet because it extends beyond the violet range that everyone sees. It does play a significant part in nature, but its effects are not optical. Recent experiments by Monsieur Chardonnay, however, have proven positively that some people respond strongly to this invisible part of the spectrum. So, Chardonnay was an inventor of artificial silk who submitted papers on ultraviolet radiation to the Academy of Sciences. So that's an interesting take, but Monet, or the creative genius of Monet's representation of color and light, came not from his innate creativity or his soul, but from his vision. Interesting take. Hot take. Okay, so I'm already excited about this painting, but we'll keep on with this article for a second. Without a doubt, Mr. Monet belongs to this number. He and his friends see ultraviolet. The masses see something different, hence the misunderstanding. Is that true? What do you guys think? I don't know. That's really interesting. I don't know. I don't know how it makes me feel. I am very touched by the poetry that stands out in his works. I admire the daring and the sobriety of his technique, and I find astonishing the plastic results he obtains. His harmonies are exquisite and irreproachably correct, but I am often astonished, even shocked, by the piece's tonality. My first impression is of something strange and implausible, because it shatters nerves that are all but still when I contemplate nature. I wonder if this person ever met him or talked to him. He's making a lot of assumptions about Mr. Monet's personal experience. For the best discussion of the opinion that the Impressionists' vision was abnormal, see Oscar Rustersward, The Violetomania of the Impressionists, from 1950. That's really interesting. It's a very interesting idea, although it's a little hard to believe. But I want to know more. Maybe I'll find a book about that. Okay, so this is called Rue Saint-Denis Festivities on June 30th, 1878. Yeah, this is a very famous painting. It's just like it vibrates with energy, doesn't it? All the French flags and all the people on the street. actually something else. We're getting more into the abstract territory here, I think. Alright. These are some interesting tones in these pieces. I have no idea how to pronounce this word. Vetoy. I struggle with TH in French. Day. I think it's like a hard T, isn't it? Vetoy. I have to look that up. Anyway, whatever it is, this is very cool. It's such a limited palette here. It's like very monochromatic, but still so expressive. I think that's a pretty common challenge in art schools, is to work with a limited palette and still be successful with your piece. Okay, here we go. That's beautiful. That's a really stunning piece. One of the things that's really hard to do in art is to have restraint, to not show absolutely everything that you see, but to show just the right things. So I guess another thing that's hard to do is curating your site. But I mean, I know this was like people look at things like this, like pieces like this, and often think, oh, that's so easy, I could do that. But you'd be surprised. It's so difficult to represent form in a specific time of day, with a specific light, in specific colors, and to do so in a way that doesn't seem overdrawn, overwrought. Yeah, that's a really amazing, beautiful piece. And not very large. 24 inches, 28 inches. It's even more impressive that it's small. Okay, and here we have Vetoy. I really need to figure out how to pronounce that. Vetoy in summertime. This is almost like a Syrah. All these tiny little dots. I'm gonna look up how you pronounce Vetoy.
Vetoy.
Oh.
Vetoy.
Vetoy. Okay, I wasn't that off. Okay, it is Vetoy. I feel better. We have another meadow outside Vetoy. Now I won't stop saying it because I know it's right. Some figures here hidden in the grass. The Seine at Vetoy. The Seine must go through this part of town. This one's very dark. All of this portion in shadow here. Sunset on the Seine at Lavacour. Winter effect. This one is almost reminiscent of the one we talked about in the other video of the harbor at Le Havre. It's beautiful though. I really just love the tones in this piece. The colors. Like, I love this part here. Wow. You look at it and you know exactly what time. I mean, it could be sunset or sunrise or sunset, but it's just so moody. This bright summer day over here. There's some beautiful rendering of trees. I don't know what they are, like cedars of Lebanon or something, but wow, those are cool. I love the rendering of clouds here. And of course the trees, obviously. They almost look like buildings. Here's a field of poppies. Look how different these two pieces are, representing a similar scene. It's really amazing how much something can change depending on light. The Artist's Garden of Bétheuil, 1880. Oh, the sunflowers. That really bright cobalt sky. This part is really gorgeous. The Customs Officer's Cabin at Pourvy, 1882. Brush on the cliffside here. Wow, this water is beautiful. The little sailboats. I love the rendering of the water here. Okay, this is that famous cliffside that all the Impressionists have painted. Etretat? I think it's Etretat. This one is at the North Carolina Museum of Art and Raleigh. That's cool. Look at all the colors in the water here. You wouldn't think, okay, I'm painting, a seascape. So what colors do I need for the water? You'd think blue, green, white. No. Look at all the colors here. The reflection of the sunset. Okay, let's read a little bit more here. The Life of a Landscapist, September 28th, 1886. This person is writing from Etretat. Dear friend, thank you for your letter with the news from Paris. I was glad to receive it and was surprised by it. It was as though it had come from another long ago world. Do you mean to tell me that all those people you mention are not dead? That they're spending time on the same trifles? Will you tell me about the exhibit? Of the Society of Independent Artists at the Tuileries interests me. We must keep an eye on all those who attempt something new, on all those who strive to perceive the unseen in nature, on all those who make a sincere effort to avoid old routines. Or is this Guy de Maupassant? Okay, so he's like a contemporary of the Impressionists. So he doesn't like the government. And at this point he's living in Etretat, which looks idyllic. It's true, I live only through my eyes. From morning to evening I go through fields and woods, by rocks and gorse, in search of pure tones, of unnoticed nuances, all the things we never learned at school. Subjected as we were to a classical education that put blinders on us, preventing us from knowing and fathoming. This person is a firebrand. Let's see what he mentions about Monet. Last year, right here, I often followed Claude Monet, who was in search of impressions. Actually, he was no longer a painter, but a hunter. He went along followed by children who carried his canvases, 5 or 6 canvases all depicting the same subject at different hours of the day and with different effects. He would take them up in turn, then put them down again, depending upon the changes in the sky. Standing before his subject, he waited, watched the sun in the shadows, capturing in a few brush strokes a failing ray of light or a passing cloud and, scorning false and conventional techniques, transferred them rapidly to his canvas. Monet's family accompanied him to the Normandy coast in early October 1885. he's seen Monet out and about in Atleta. Etleta. God, why am I saying it so weird? I want to say Entrechat, but I know it's not that. It's about this man's encounter with various Impressionists who visited the Normandy coast to paint. It's a cool piece. There's another rendering of the famous cliff. La Menepote. Menepote? I don't know. Here the light is brilliant without being harsh. Everything is bright without being merciless, and everything blends admirably. But one must see, or rather discover. The eye, that most wonderful of human organs, is infinitely perfectible, and it can attain, when intelligently trained, a marvelous acuity. Okay, so he references this book written by Émile Zola, who we talked about in the previous video, called L'Œuvre, and it's a controversial novel written in 1886 about a modern artist, a fictionalized version of the Impressionists. That sounds interesting. Okay, here we have the first of the windmills. Fields of tulips in Holland. Monsieur Monet is always a strange artist. Some look upon him as a naturalist, but basically he is a dreamer. So guys, I hate to say it, but we might have to do another part. This book is immense. Let's read a little bit more and then we'll wrap up. The color scale of Monet's pictures is original and essentially calculated to produce upon the observer an intense psychological impression. This is a female author. It's uncommon. Monsieur Monet's pictures 270, Poppies in Bloom, and 212, Landscape at Chiffany, are companion pictures inasmuch as one is the continuation of the other and an expression of psychological, philosophical thought. The prevailing color tones of the two pictures are brilliant reds and peculiar bluish greens. Attention was called above to this color rule as being used in what are most properly the highest philosophical studies of the artist. As art expressions of scientific and philosophical thought, these two pictures occupy the most prominent place of any in the collection. Number 270, so that's Poppies in Bloom, is the best illustration of the theory of triangulation to be found in Monet's pictures. From the foreground and running diagonally from left to right is the poppy field, and the ground rising above it forms a green grassy amphitheater, closing out from sight all objects beyond the foreground, thus inviting to progress. The narrow expanse of sky is seen above the hilly bank. Its depth is indeterminable, and a sense of solemnity steals over the observer. He is brought almost terribly near the source and origin of things. The sky is in marked contrast to the poppy field and hill, where it is the present that offers. Here is the beginning of life's course. Unconscious of what is back of the hill, the soul is absorbed by the immediate. Though she may step forward through the gay flowered field, onward to her future, the past is locked in mystery. Nature throws no obstacle to her progress. There is no warning hand to hold the soul from running to her own destruction, and the indifference of nature to suffering or happiness is terrible to contemplate. Wow. This is a cool piece. I want to know more about this Helen Abbott / Selin Sabrin. She's got a lot of interesting ideas. Monet does not offer any solution to the result which his pictures lead. He is occupied in giving expression to the most serious truths of our life. He is recording the chronicles of modern thought. You know, it's interesting looking at these books about artists that created around this time and focused heavily on landscapes. This undertone of the power of nature and the beauty of nature, but also the indifference of nature to us and our lives and all the stuff that we get up to. But thanks again for taking the time to read this book with me and learn a little bit more about another master artist. I really enjoyed getting the chance to spend some more time with this book and with you. Let me know if you found this interesting, if there are any artists that you'd really like to learn more about, or you'd like for me to learn more about, because I always love learning about artists. And I'll see you next time with more of Monet, a retrospective. Take care.